Have you ever thought to yourself, I want a graphics card like an RTX 3060, but I want it as cheap as possible? Well, if that's you, we're going to enter into chat here the RTX 3060 Mobile, which is a Aliexpress special. You won't find this in your regular PC retailer store, because essentially what they've done here is grabbed a mobile RTX 3060, the RTX 3060M, and slapped it on a desktop grade PCB along with the GDDR6 memory, and then said, hey, if you get some custom drivers, you can run this in a desktop PC like a desktop graphics card. Now, there's actually some really good news in relation to this card, and that is it can run a lot more efficient than not just the regular RTX 3060 desktop 12GB, but even an RTX 4060 desktop. So that kind of blew me away when I saw those numbers, and it kind of got me curious as to, are the caveats really as bad as what you have been told? For instance, I saw a video from David Does Tech just completely writing this GPU off. And so here's where it gets a little bit tricky, because I'm pretty sure I would have had the exact same experience as David does if I didn't install these Frankenstein drivers. Now, if you're getting a mobile chip like this, the 3060M, you cannot install the default downloadable drivers from NVIDIA's website. They just won't install, and the card will sit there as a Microsoft display adapter. But if you get custom drivers, you can then install the GPU, and it'll come up, at least in this case, after I checked out Google desktop mobile graphics card drivers, these Frankenstein drivers came up, and when I installed it, the GPU appeared as a Frankenstein GPU, both in Device Manager and GPU Z. So these drivers, they installed absolutely fine. I did scan them for viruses as well, and they came up with no viruses installed. So this just makes it ultimately the only reason why we're even going to have a bit of fun in today's video and check it against the desktop variants. And we'll do that right after today's video sponsor. Never pay full price for Windows 10 or 11 again. With today's video sponsor, SCD Keys, you can get activated for as little as $15 using that coupon BFTYC. Links in description below. Welcome back to Tech Yes City. Here it is, the RTX 3060 Mobile. Let's get into these benchmarks here. We've tested out 1080p and 1440p, and I'll also show you guys some side-by-side comparisons against the regular 3060 desktop 12 gig. And what we're seeing here is the first game, Fortnite. This actually scored a victory at both 1080p and 1440p. Now, as we said earlier in the intro, the best news about all this was that this card did it with lower power consumption than even a 4060. Even though it loses out to FPS in this game at the 4060, it's just impressive to see how well this card is tuned out of the box in terms of its efficiency profile. Now you're thinking, well, Brian, if it's using less power, how is it beating the RTX 3060 desktop? And this is where, if we go into GPU Z, we can actually pull up some interesting information on this GPU. And that is, it has actually more CUDA cores enabled by default versus the 3060 desktop variant. So in other words, you've got more horsepower in the engine with the 3060 Mobile, at least this variant you get off AliExpress here, than the OG 3060, which is actually the #1 selling GPU right now. So you're looking at a much better 3060 that uses less power and gives out, sometimes, depending on the game, more performance. That's actually a really big win for this card. Now, also on that note, we're in Fortnite, which has anti-cheats and things like that. So if you do have a janky driver install, you're not going to be able to load up this game. It just simply won't work. And so this is where the developers of this driver, this custom driver, did an extremely good job in letting this card work like a normal desktop variant. So kudos to you guys out there. I'll put a link in the description below. You can go check out these guys and say, hey, thanks a lot for that. And the next game, though, we got is another competitive title where there was no problems with anti-cheat, and this was Apex Legends. And here's where we had a victory at 1080p against the 3060 desktop variant, but then at 1440p, it was much of a muchness, pretty much the same results there. Though, this is where things did start to take a little bit of a turn, where we had Returnal scoring a slight victory at 1080p and then losing at 1440p But then if we go over to the ray tracing results, this is where it won against the desktop variant. So it's kind of like, well, you got those more CUDA cores there, and they're able to do a little bit more ray tracing than the OG. The next up is where things start to lose out to the 3060 desktop, and this is in Baldur's Gate 3 at 1080p and 1440p, where the 0.1% lows, that's the worst FPS, also did a little bit worse, and that's probably due to the fact that the memory clock speeds are clocked a bit lower than the desktop variant. So the desktop variant does have about 10% faster memory speeds by default enabled, and it does have a bit better bandwidth going on there due to that. The last game we're going to throw up for you guys is Starfield, and this one, just like Baldur's Gate 3 testing we're doing here, it's actually very heavy, where we're getting over 60 FPS, but it loses out to the desktop variant, and then at 1440p, it's just under 50 FPS, and again, loses out to the desktop variant. So what we're seeing there is, depending on the title, your 3060 mobile can beat out the 3060, or it can lose to it. But one thing for sure is it does do a better job on the efficiency profile. And I was just so curious about this, I had to go back and look at it again and see what was going on in some of these titles. And it's just got a better frequency curve, where it's actually very close to some of the undervolts that I do on the desktop variants, where I'll drop it down to around 850 millivolts. And this out of the box goes from 850 millivolts to 900 on its default profile. So it's already tuned for efficiency. So that's the great thing. If you buy the mobile version here, not only are you going to save money, but you're just going to get a card that's tuned really well out of the box. Which is like, for me, I've been sort of at Tech Yeah City, I've been harping on about this for so many years now already, that I want to see more efficient cards come to the market on the desktop, like for CPUs and GPUs. And then we get this in and it works perfectly, and it's got such a great efficiency profile out of the box. So I'm kind of like, the guys at Aliexpress managed to do it. Why can't NVIDIA, Intel, and AMD do it? Anyhow, that's what blows me away out of all this testing and out of all these comparisons that I've done thus far, is the mobile janky version, the one that a lot of YouTubers just completely wrote off, actually has a lot going for it. It's just, we got to talk now with a strong, hard conclusion. If you're thinking about buying this, we're going to point to the negatives and the drawbacks, because you've seen all the positives now. The performance is really good, the efficiency is great, and the value's there, but, and this is the big but, you've got the chance of course, ongoing support just not being there. You've got to remember that there's a guy out there, or a group of people, doing these custom drivers for free, and the ongoing support, there's a risk that that could drop off at any time. In other words, you won't get any future driver support in the future, and so you could be left with a game that comes out, it needs these driver optimizations, and it won't work properly without them, and you can't get the driver installed because they're not releasing the custom hacked driver. And so that's the problem you face. There's no guarantee for that, and looking at things so far, they seem to release a new driver every couple of months that's delayed by roughly a month or so. So it does take them a little bit of time to do these custom drivers. But that being said, it is the best implementation of a hacked driver I have seen to date. I've tested it out on 2 different systems here just to make sure it works fine, and the install's been flawless both times. I've been able to boot up games absolutely fine as well, and the driver's only a month behind, so it hasn't really put me in any inconvenience, which is why I'm a little bit more positive than I am usually when I took a look at one of these cards in the past. But that being said, would I personally buy it? And the answer is no, unfortunately, just because of that element there, where even though you're saving money today and you're actually getting a really efficient card and good card in the benchmarks, you're just getting the risk. And that's what you're going to take if you go with this mobile version that can get shut down at any time, really. And that's the risk, yeah. So just laying it all out there for you guys, but it was very interesting to take a look at this and just see how different the PC world could be, especially in terms of efficiency. Anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, then be sure to hit that like button and also let us know in the comments section below what you think about the 3060 mobile from Jieshuo. The last thing we will throw up is the Jieshuo temperatures and fan noise, which is going to be really impressive here because the card doesn't use up a whole lot of power, so it's actually very easy to cool down. And so the temperatures were really well controlled. The fan noises were virtually non-existent. So that's another basically a big benefit from going with the lower power consumption, more efficient cards, is they're going to run cooler and quieter. Of course, save you money on the power bill too. So really impressive to see what could be on the desktop if NVIDIA just allowed the mobile variants like this to install like a regular driver, like for instance the RX 6600M, which we took a look at in a separate video, and that was a strong recommendation. If you guys haven't seen that video, I do recommend checking that out because that mobile hacked version on Aliexpress just works fine with the regular desktop drivers. So there's no caveats there, and there's all gains. So if you want to check out that video, put it up there. And in the meantime, if you've stayed this far and you're enjoying that tech, yes, content, you want to see it the moment it drops, then you know what to do. Hit that sub button, ring that bell, and I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.